It is no news for everyone that when the pandemic struck, not one country in the world was able to flourish just as well as they did before everything happened. Economies collapsed, people went jobless, and unfortunately, lives were lost. Many countries share the same struggle, but some are having it worse due to the suppression of their rights to speak up regarding the discrepancies that have been going on, as entities try to still get the better of everyone despite the situation we are in right now. Perhaps one of the relatively overlooked outcomes of the current issues we are facing today is the bank runs that happened in some locations in China. What exactly is this? And what does it have to do with the whole world? Stay tuned to find out. This is Diversified Streams, your go-to YouTube channel for all things crypto. If you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on the latest news and tips related to crypto, and make sure to keep your notifications on so you'll be updated with our latest videos. We post frequently so you wouldn't want to miss it. In today's video, we'll be talking about the Chinese bank runs, a threat that does not present itself to be big for obvious reasons, what the Chinese are doing in order to overcome such a problem, and where Bitcoin stands in all of this. We've got a long video ahead of us, so without further ado, let's get on with the video. Now, you may have heard of the Chinese bank runs, but it would not be entirely weird if you haven't. The reason being the lack of transparency in the country with these types of discussions. Discussions that involve the rights of the people to protest for something reasonable and fight for something that's rightfully theirs. The country of China has had a reputation for hiding its issues from the whole world, minimizing the worries of its people in any way they can, suppressing their right to protest, and silencing them in many ways one could ever imagine. With the coming 20th Party Congress, the president of the country, Xi Jinping, surely does not want any distractions. But what exactly caused these bank runs in China? In the last 3 months that passed, a number of cases of bank runs have been observed in some rural banks across China. In all these activities, an estimated $1.5 billion worth of deposits have been lost. Now some of you may wonder why all this happened, as this does not look like something people regularly do, right? Well, there are thousands of rural banks situated in the local cities of China, and these banks counted altogether carry a value of about $300 billion, occupying 12% of the country's whole banking asset. Not everyone is granted permission to open an account and get loans in such a type of bank, as they follow strict rules relative to it, and it is also not possible to expand their service outside the locality in which they operate. In essence, these rural banks are established for the sole purpose of helping small to medium-sized businesses. Now, I guess it has been established that these are banks in rural areas. And so as people started to move to more industrialized locations that have filled most of the Chinese lands, it is only natural for these banks to lose customers. As such, they resorted to using the power of online platforms to acquire clients. As you already guessed, doing so means that they are also reaching out to people outside of their locality, which is technically illegal. But I guess the law does not touch them because transactions are done online. Add that to the fact that they have learned how to entice clients with higher interest rates and flexible terms. It's nearly impossible to not get swayed. Eventually, this caused people out of these localities to invest their money in the banks, with the hopes that their money is secured and readily available should they decide to withdraw because of the government deposit insurance. Now, due to the lack of monetary policies that caused some of the biggest banks in China to offer lower interest rates than what these rural banks offer, a lot of people took the risk. And as you already know, with things that appear to be good to be true, everything went downhill after that. At the height of the pandemic, when lockdowns were all over the place and truly cruel, everything was much worse for those who invested in the rural banks after finding out that they have been denied access to their money. In the Henan province, 4 rural banks froze their deposits amounting to 10 billion yuan, that's around $1.5 billion. Similar cases were reported about users of the applications of the banks who were not able to withdraw any of their funds because of what the banks did. Because of this, it is expected that people would eventually get angry and take matters into their own hands, explaining the photos of people protesting in the banks, as well as in front of the local office of the China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission in Shengqiao. Were there signs that overtly obliged the banks to bring back their money, you'd realize that this is not the type of publicity the country aims to establish. As such, these protests were suppressed by restricting the travel capacities of the people by disguising the act as a way to minimize the transmission of the virus. Some peaceful protesters were detained, and some violently beaten, but one thing remained sure: the people were even more enraged by this rather than scared. The protests continues to ensue, leading up to the biggest protest that happened since the pandemic took place, which involved over 1,000 people protesting outside a PBOC branch. The peaceful protest was taken care of in a rather violent way, and no amount of censorship was able to conceal this tumult. As a way to silence the people, the government promised people a compensation plan that would help the people who had deposits amounting to up to 50,000 yuan, around $7,500. A small remedy for the already big problem that we have now, as there are a lot of people whose deposits amount to more than 50,000 yuan. In this situation that we have, the bigger problem these banks are facing rather than the loss of funds is the tendency for what happened to change the way people think about rural banks. The gargantuan amount of banks all over China would be badly affected, as the people would naturally be doubtful of the capacity of the banks to liquidate their assets in the event that something like this transpired once more. The panic is the bigger dilemma in all this, and it's no certainty that the people will just easily sweep everything under the rug. Before we continue with the video, what are your thoughts about the bank runs in China? Do you think that what happened would unfortunately pave the way for the people to withdraw their investments in banks? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below, and do not forget to give us a thumbs up and our channel a subscribe. As an economic giant, you'd probably think that China will be able to overcome this hurdle just as fast as other first world countries would. But it might not be as easy as that. China has been going through a rough patch in terms of its economy, and it is not only due to the bank runs, but also the over-leveraged poverty developers. The dollar bond prices of the biggest developers of China are so high, establishing a feeling of renewed skepticism with regard to the capacity of these companies to pay their obligations. Another thing to take note of is in this country, commercial papers are used as quasi-currencies endorsed as good as money. They are used everywhere, in banks, developers, suppliers, businesses, and any other entities linked to the construction chain. Once again, these commercial papers proved to be a headache as the protesters from the bank runs rejected the idea of receiving such instead of their money, which is truly understandable. It's really a cycle of people getting scammed and not learning anything at all, as they seem to be falling for the same sweet promises that are too good to be true. As they are to rural banks, people felt as though they scored a good deal, investing in properties that are only existing on blueprints and taking out loans to pay for apartment units. To them, the demand for such properties is so high that it would not be an issue to pay off the mortgage and other related costs. Even the banks had the same perception about it, which is why they were quick to approve these loans and issue mortgages. But life tends to be tricky sometimes, and the troubles of the property developers tasked with constructing these homes have failed at doing their jobs. Unfinished properties were delivered to the people, and that's already the best case scenario, as some people did not even receive anything at all. This is the reason why it is not entirely shocking to see another swarm of people protesting, this time by stopping to pay their mortgages and their obligations. This time, the banks are most affected, as the cycle of their income generation has been put to a halt, making them unable to give something back to the depositors. All this has, of course, unsurprisingly, resulted in the dropping of the stocks of Chinese banks, something that's expected to happen after everything that's happened, but still a really sad thing to see. So now we are seeing how dark and unfortunate it can be if we want to invest in the wrong thing. And above all, fall for tempting offers that are too good to be true. The bank runs in China are only a manifestation of what may happen if we do not think twice about our investments. We also see how the government plays a part in the unlawful minimization of such threat, suppressing the right of people to their own money just to cover their wrong decisions. The money of the people is taken and their voices are muffled, and these are only a few of the things that can happen to other countries with smaller economic foundations should the same unfortunate thing befall them. This is exactly the reason why more and more people across the globe have turned to Bitcoin. And this is also why we are trying to get you interested in it. Much like the conventional currencies that we know of and use today, Bitcoin has all the functions necessary to use and store value, with even great security. Bitcoin is impervious to counterfeiting and decentralized, giving you a higher level of security and utility than the currencies that we use today. Bitcoin is digital, which means that transactions across platforms and even across borders are much easier and less costly, does not produce as much as environmental waste, and is becoming the face of currency in the nearing future. With people lining up to get a piece of the pie that Bitcoin is today, now is high time to look at it as the next best alternative that will provide us the dependability that we seek today. It is a harrowing fate to see yourself unable to make use of your own money because of the risks that come with investing in really risky projects. But Bitcoin can definitely wipe away all of this if we play our cards right and lean towards it more. And there you have it, guys. Thank you for watching today's content, and I do hope that you learned something about what is happening in the world today and how it affects the way we think about alternatives to currencies, especially Bitcoin. If you have any thoughts about today's video, do not hesitate to leave them in the comment section down below, and let us see if we can create a discussion forum down there. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for future uploads. This has been Diversified Streams. Goodbye, and see you in our next video.